In this lesson, we'll take a look at how we can start to add file textures to our geometry in Maya. So at some point, you're going to want to customize the look a little bit more. So let's say on this body, we want to create some stripes and some paint, maybe an emblem, a number, some panel divisions, maybe something a little bit more custom than something that is generated just in Maya. So in order to do that, we need to get the UV layout out of Maya and into our painting application. In this case, we're going to be using Photoshop. So let's open up our UV texture editor, and we can see the UVs here. I've just gone ahead and flipped this shell vertically, so I've just rotated it a couple of times so it's facing up. And so what we want to do is now save out an image, and that's called the UV snapshot. So we'll go to Polygons, UV snapshot, and you can see it brings up a file name. So it wants to call it out UV, and it wants to put it in the images folder of our Maya project. It also wants to make it 256 by 256. So we're going to enlarge this a little bit. So I'll make this 2K. And then the image format, I'm just going to change that to JPEG. The UV range 0 to 1, which is normal, is this quadrant right here. Okay, so this 0 to 1 corresponds to this area where we've already put it, so that's good. Let's say OK, and we'll go ahead and make that new file. All right, so the next thing that we'll do is to create our texture. So let's go into Photoshop, and let's open up our UV layout. And then from here, you could start creating new layers and painting this up. Now, we've got a file texture that you can use, but because the UV layouts are not going to match, because we've gone through this process separately of creating our model, even though we're kind of matching up with one another, the geometry is probably not going to be exactly the same, and the UVs really aren't going to be exactly the same. It's going to be hard to get those exact, and that's what our textures are based on. So to make things a little bit easier for you, if you want to kind of reuse the texture that I have, I've kind of kept everything separate so you can kind of move it around. So let's open up a file here. Let's go into source images, and it's going to be this mech color raw.psd file. Let's open this up. So this is going to be the kind of base texture. You can see we've got kind of a metal derived from that substance. We've got some painted stripes and numbers and things like that. And instead of baking everything down into an image that you have to use, I've kind of left everything separate so you can use this base but kind of move things around however you need to. So let's take a look at kind of setting this up. So with our out UV image, let's go ahead and select it, copy it, and let's paste it into our file and just leave it up at the top. I'm going to change our mode to screen, and that allows us to see the texture underneath, but it also allows us to see the UV. So we kind of know where these different pieces are going to be. So we kind of know, these are the thrusters back here, so that's going to be in between the thrusters. This stripe is going to be up on that top portion. This is the underside, so it's just kind of shaded. We can kind of get an idea of where the panels are going to break and that sort of thing. We can get an idea of where the stripes are going to be. And so I've left everything separate so that you can come in here with any of these and sort of move, some of these elements around a little bit as you need. Now you can also alternatively use the texture and try to modify your UVs to fit. So just keep in mind that whatever is underneath this particular polygon is going to show up on your polygon in 3D space. So we can take the emblem, and maybe in this one we'll kind of move it up a little bit, move it around. Keep in mind this is the front, so you want it to face the front. Got a kind of a number on it as well. Okay, so what you want to do is kind of spend some time. Let's kind of go through this. So we've got the base color. Let me kind of turn off these different elements here, and we'll kind of look at them separately. So we just started with the base color, which you can actually save, export an image based on your substance. And so you can do that. That's our base metal. I added a vent kind of on the back just from a photograph. So adding a little bit of photographic detail there. I added kind of a body count. So this guy's hunting aliens, so just kind of markings on the side, just with a simple shape that I've duplicated. I also added some stripes. So a stripe on the back, and you can see I've kind of broken it up so it looks like it's got a little bit of age to it. Same thing on the sides of this one. Also some text, so some captain markings, a number. I also added an emblem on the front, and then some panel lines. So the panel lines I just created with vector shapes, and just kind of breaks up the overall look and kind of gives you the idea of the sort of metallic structure that's created there. Okay, and you can kind of modify those and move those around. If you open this up, you'll see all these shapes in here. So this is this shape. Like, you go in with our selection tool, and if this doesn't overlap, we can kind of fix that. Okay, so you can really kind of customize it and just make sure that it matches your particular model and your particular UVs. Now, it's not going to be perfect, but if you create something from scratch, then you can customize it directly to the UVs that you're using. So we can kind of modify things in here. I also created some shadows, so kind of coming in, some shadows and dirt, and then also just some dirt over the top of everything to kind of blend everything together. So once we've got our texture created, the next thing we want to do is just kind of save it out. And so we want to make sure that we turn off our UV map before we save it. And let's go ahead and just save this out. So we'll go to Save As. And let's choose, I'm just going to save it as a JPEG. I'm just going to overwrite this file, Met Color Raw, and go ahead and replace it. And now let's see what happens if we apply that to our model in Maya. So back in Maya, we now need to bring in a file texture, which we just looked at. So when we want to pipe something into a particular channel, remember we use the little checkerboard. So we'll open that up. And this time, instead of using any of these, we'll choose just File. This will bring up the opportunity to bring in a file. It'll automatically go to the source images directory, so we'll choose this Met Color Raw, and let's bring that file in as color. Now let me go ahead and hit 3 on our keyboard to smooth that out. And you can see that it's now using that texture as the color. Okay. Now there are some spaces where you might need to modify that texture. You can see it's kind of lopsided over on the one side. And so we can come in here and grab this. And so it's going to be kind of over here on this side. We could come in and sort of modify that a little bit based on the UVs, or you can modify the texture, actually down here and right here. Okay, so that's how you can add file textures. Really, really simple. It's just piped in just like the ramp was, but it's just a file that you're using that you created somewhere else. So once you have your file texture, you can start to use those in different ways. So we could use it as, for instance, a bump map. So let's take a look at that in the next lesson.